The issue of religious liberty is hot on both sides of the border right now. I'm in the office of James Lunney, MP for Nanaimo, Alberni.
Correct.
Okay, you were first elected in 2000 under the Canadian Alliance banner. You've since been elected as a Conservative in 2004, 2006, 2008, and 2011. You weren't going to run again, but yet you decided to leave your party caucus. Why now?
Well, Brian, you're probably aware I got caught up in this controversy over evolution. It seems that they're trying to trap social conservatives on a false construct of evolution, which can be defined different ways, means different things to different people. And actually, I have a background in zoology. So, you know,
you have a science degree, correct?
Yeah, zoology and chemistry. And then, of course, I was also a chiropractor, got 4 years post my BSc. And I've been studying ever since about the human body for most of my lifetime. So look, I got caught up a little bit in that. There seems to be a deliberate construct to attack social conservatives over this thing about evolution. You don't believe in Darwin, you don't believe in science, which is patently false. And it's a false construct from another century. There's an ancient bigotry there. That I'm personally offended to because I actually know something about this. And where the whole theory of evolution gets stalled is at the cell. You're made up of 80 to 100 trillion of them, and they can't explain where the first one came from. So if
You were talking, you had a scrum with reporters after question period, and you were talking about the cell issue and saying Richard Dawkins had mentioned that maybe it was E.T. He did say that. He did say little green men once. Is that what you were hinting at? Well,
actually, if you watch Ben Stein's film, it's actually kind of hilarious because, of course, he's suggesting that it's somewhat higher life form, and we've been looking for that for some time. There's lots of great movies about it, but in fact, there's a shortage of empirical evidence at this point. But anyway, he did say that actually perhaps when he was cornered on it and embarrassed and he couldn't explain where it came from, he said perhaps some super advanced race from another solar system or universe who evolved through some Darwinian process had sowed the first cell on Earth, which I find rather interesting.
So, look, evolution is not something most Canadians debate in everyday life. It's not something that comes up in Parliament often. Why did you jump into the debate with the other politicians who had raised it in their respective legislatures?
Well, I got drawn in by a Twitter troll saying, well, Lunney doesn't even believe in evolution. And I responded with a very controversial thing saying, basically, apparently you don't understand science or managing assumptions, which is what science is all about. So that was the first tweet. And then he barbed me again. And I said, look, I have no problem with evolution as a scientific theory. Just stop calling it a fact. And that set off this controversy, and the media rolled it together with what Rick Nichols said. I would never say I don't believe in evolution because much of what evolution takes to itself is in fact natural process. That probably better described as species variation and adaptation. But nevertheless, so that part is observable, it's fact. But macroevolution, it's macroevolution, Brian. When you step into that, it's the world of the cell. The nanotechnology going on inside your body in any single cell is more technical. It's worlds within worlds of molecular activity. It is actually far beyond anything Bill Gates has produced or Apple or sending a man to the International Space Station. The technology inside your cell at the nanotechnology level is fascinating, and yet the people criticizing me don't know anything about it in most cases.
Okay, so it sounds like you may believe in evolution to a point, but not fully in Darwinian evolution.
Well, Darwin, was a great scientist in my view. He made fantastic observations. It's the interpretation of those today because, you see, cell theory was just developing. They didn't have the microscopes we have today. They didn't have electron microscopes. Mm-hmm. They didn't know about organelles. They didn't know about all the great, all the mitochondria and Golgi apparatus in there, and ribosomes and how that worked. And actually, there's videos that kids are watching today that are fascinating on the constructs of what's going on. They're factories. There are factories going on inside your cell that defy. It couldn't possibly have formed by random events. And that's where the macroevolution theory is totally stalled. And I call that, the stone that has stopped evolution is a living stone. It's the cell. We had a stone that took down a big man, a giant in his day. Many centuries ago was defying the armies of ancient Israel. And Goliath took down a giant of a military man with a stone. We had a former NDP member of parliament who put himself between God and his purposes, and he had a little trouble with the stone. It landed in his pocket. See, ultimately, God is not mocked. The stone that has defied the macroevolution theory is, in fact, living stones. And you're made up of 80 to 100 trillion of them, and they cannot possibly explain that this happened by random events. And so they're looking at either E.T. did it or God did it.
Okay, and so,
but you're not allowed to say God did it.
That can be a debate that reasonable Canadians can have back and forth on what they believe.
Of course.
But you don't feel that in the current environment you were able to express your beliefs, or you weren't able to express them in the Conservative Party? Explain.
No, Brian, I'm concerned that every social conservative who is running for office at the senior levels is going to be confronted by this canard. Do you believe in Darwin? Don't you believe in science? Gordon Dirks, Minister of Education, Alberta, was targeted this way, newly appointed. Jim Prentice, reaching out to social conservatives, appoints a pastor. He was slow to respond when asked by a troll that approached him. Well, at least I want to know that you believe in Darwin and science. And he was slow to answer. So she walked away saying, just what I thought, a Minister of Education who doesn't believe in science. And there's Jim Prentice.
But let me stop there, and we'll get into the political side of it in a second, but let me stop there. Evolution is a theory. And in science, there are theories, and they come and they go. Newtonian physics was a theory that scientists accepted for a long time. They no longer do. There are other theories that have come and gone. Darwin's own theory on evolution transplanted a previous theory. So shouldn't people constantly be questioning theories within science? Isn't that part of science?
Absolutely. Today, we're very, very sloppy in one of the foundations of science, which you have to be very diligent in managing, and that is assumptions. You have to manage your assumptions. You have to be open to new information becoming available. I think perhaps Darwin was far more open than his cousin, who started this false construct that you can't believe in God. It was an impediment to studying science. His name was Francis Galton. He was the father of eugenics. We know how well that worked out for the world. Led to the Holocaust and murdering of millions, and not only millions of Jews, and the worst genocide in modern history, but also to millions of other people being killed. The notion that we can get rid of the weak and the disabled or people we don't like and just kill them to build a superior race. That was Francis Galton, and it's still carried through by the minority of atheists that dominate science in America, although not other parts of the world.
Well, Francis Collins would be surprised that you can't believe in God and be a scientist. He mapped the genome.
Well, that's right, and he's now the head of the National Institutes of Health. He wrote a book called The Language of God about DNA, because they can't, Brian, if you unraveled one of your chromosomes and stretched the DNA out, uncoiled it, you'd have 2 meters of molecular structure here that you can't see with a visible eye, hard to see with a microscope. You can see them when they're dividing, when they're bunched together as chromosomes, but it's a string 2 meters long. So DNA, they can't explain that by random process.
Okay, so this is the science, and scientists should be able to debate.
Absolutely.
You don't feel they're able to. I'm sure others don't. But within politics, you felt that if you spoke out as a conservative, because you've said the conservatives didn't ask you to leave, they didn't push you out.
Absolutely, I voluntarily left, Brian.
Okay,
I voluntarily stepped out. Why? Because the trolls out there would try to brand and tear down my entire party. For that. And you know what? I have stepped out voluntarily because I'm not running again. I'm sitting as an independent, and it's not just this federal Conservative Party. It's social conservatives at any level are going to be attacked on this false construct based on a false interpretation of modern science. And they don't know that. I know something about cell biology. I mean, it's amazing. It's worlds within worlds. You know, you got 1 million cells a second dying. Through controlled internal demolition without harming the neighboring cells. 1 million cells a second. You can't explain how this could possibly develop by random process. It's called apoptosis, A-P-O-P-T-O-S-I-S, and it's the key to understanding cancer, and it's going to be determining whether we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient per year with the new drugs that are being developed right now to help cancer cells rediscover this ability, because apparently they have lost the ability to undergo controlled self-destruction, called apoptosis. And, you know, there are cost-effective measures that have been available for more than a decade to do the same thing for a fraction of the cost. I have a bill coming up called Motion 501 that I hope to talk about this more thoroughly. You know, but it's far beyond even the evolution controversy. We have doctors on conscience provisions being sidelined. I mean, freedom of religion and conscience are fundamental, let me say it that way. In our charter, they're called fundamental rights. Fundamental. And yet they're being challenged in an unprecedented way by College of Physicians and Surgeons here in Ontario has already ruled that those conscience provisions no longer apply and doctors are having to sue for their charter rights. We have Trinity Western University. What are they being targeted by? Big banks and by 70 other major corporations, and their own law society is being lobbied to cut out a faith-based school from practicing law. This is discrimination against my Christian community in an unprecedented way.
Do you think that all of this would be happening if what we were talking about were Sikh, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim law schools, or MPs who adhere to those religions? Because people that will say Christians have some wacky beliefs, well, if you think that, look at the other faiths. And if you don't believe in that faith, you can look at it and say that has a pretty strange belief, but those don't get targeted in the same way, it seems.
It's unthinkable. It's unthinkable that any faith in a multiracial, multi-faith, multicultural country, that any person of any faith should be ridiculed publicly for what they believe. It's totally out of character with our country. And just on TV the other day on Power and Politics, Ian Capstick, he's out there on the media regularly. He explained that he's out to take down James Lunney because he feels I'm a threat to his right to get married. Now, the interesting thing is, I understand he's already married. He has the right to be married. But he thinks that I'm a threat to his right to marry, and he's got to take me down. I'm not even running again, Brian.
Who was the last person that said, let's reverse same-sex marriage? I haven't heard that call in Canada at all.
No, it's certainly not from our party. But, he describes himself as a militant atheist. And my question is that define our new Canada? Let me say, Brian, just today, Al-Shabaab is responsible for attacking a Christian community. 70 people dead so far in Kenya. The atrocities are racking up. It's so hard to keep track of them. But what does it say to people who have fled persecution in other lands and come here to Canada, like the Coptic Christian community in Toronto, who had a memorial for 21 of their co-religionists, Christians, who were killed by ISIS on the shores of the Mediterranean with their throats slit just because they were migrant workers and they're Christians? What does it say to them when they see their views being trashed here by people that want to take their right to their beliefs? They just fled persecution. And what does it say to the family of Shahbaz Badi, the man who was the minister responsible for religious minorities in Pakistan? He was here in Canada. He was offered refuge, but he went back to defend the people he's responsible for. What does it say to his family in Toronto when these militant atheists and the despicable comments I've had through social media from a bunch of people believing a false construct about evolution that want my ignorant views removed from Parliament? And, what does that say to this community about the country that they've come to, which normally had a reputation for tolerance? Is it militant atheists that define the new Canada? That's what I'm asking the media today.
All right, James Lunney, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.